Welcome back to Season Liberally. Today we're going to be making chocolate banana bread and teaching you the muffin method. Hope you stick around. So today I want to show you an excellent recipe for banana bread. Now we always, in my house, we always buy way too many bananas. We wind up buying so many bananas that very often we have to freeze those bananas. We'll peel them and then we'll put them in the freezer in Ziploc bags, and then when we need them for baking, we'll pull them out and use them. Banana bread's a great way to get rid of those bananas. So recently had some bananas that were starting to go bad. I pulled them out, put them in the freezer, took them out today, and if you take a look in here, you see this liquid. Now this liquid, these were solid when I pulled them out, let them defrost, and now there's this ton of liquid in here. This liquid is really flavorful. It's got a ton of flavor in it, and it's really, it just adds so much to your final dish. So this is normal, and this is something that you actually want to get. It's broken down the cell walls inside the freezer, and when it comes out, it just sheds that moisture. So this is what we want. This is 4 bananas, and they have been, like I say, they're very ripe, and they've been frozen. This muffin method is you take all the wet ingredients, you combine them together in one bowl, and you get them so they're nicely blended. Then you sift your dry ingredients. In this case today, I'm just going to whisk my dry ingredients together to get rid of any clumps. Then you mix them together very quickly, and then you bake it very quickly, because with the muffin, when you're making muffins, you're normally using a chemical leavener. That chemical leavener in this case is baking soda. Baking soda will activate twice. It's going to activate the moment it touches water, and then it's going to activate again when it gets to a certain temperature. You want to make sure, and it's going to start basically creating bubbles. You want to get your baked good in the oven as quickly as possible, because as it produces those gases and those bubbles, you want to start cooking the dessert, and so it starts to trap those bubbles. If you just let it sit out on your counter, the bubbles will just work their way through the liquid that is your batter. But if you put it in, it will collect those and capture those, and that's what gives it that rise. So you want to make sure you put it in there as quickly as possible. So that's the muffin method. Let's get started. I have my bananas here. I want to mash these. You can use a fork if you want. I want to squish them down. You don't have to get them completely pureed, but what I want to do is I want to get them so that they're kind of squished. Now I'm using a masher for this. You can use a fork. You could probably pulse them a couple times if you had a food processor. I'm going to just squish them out a little bit. And that's nice. It's a nice chunky looking banana. That's exactly what we want. And when you smell it, you'll smell those banana esters. You really want to have that banana flavor in there, and that when you put these in the freezer and they freeze like that, especially if they're nice and ripe, you get that really wonderful flavor, and it's going to add a lot of sweetness to this dish. So we're going to put in our eggs. We have 2 eggs. Now remember, when you're cracking your eggs, don't crack them on the side here. Crack them on a flat surface. Crack them on the side. You have an opportunity to shove a piece of shell inside of there, and you don't want to do that because you don't want to fish it out. So to this also, we're going to add our yogurt because it's a semi-solid. We're going to add our butter. Now this is 6 tablespoons of melted butter. Now we're also adding our sugar. In the muffin method, very often sugar gets added in with the wet ingredients. You do that because you want to make sure that your sugar is dissolved completely. You don't want to put it in your dry ingredients, mix it up, and then wind up not having it be completely dissolved. Because in the muffin method, we're not going to actually mix this dough, this batter, until it's completely mixed. There might be a few pockets of flour or things. We're gonna blend it, but we're not gonna make it so it's completely homogeneous. And so there might be little pieces in there, and then it might cook, and then it would just be a crunchy piece in there. So what you want to do is you want to put it inside of your wet ingredients. So this is it's a packed cup of dark brown sugar. So I'm just gonna whisk this together And I could have even been a little less thorough with the masher earlier if I wanted to, but I want to make sure that all that sugar melted in there. Giving it a nice stir here. All right, wet ingredients are done. We're going to put this on the side. So now two cups of flour, we are going to add our dry ingredients. Now our dry ingredients are 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 3/4 of a teaspoon to a teaspoon of kosher salt, depending on how coarse your kosher salt is. The coarser it is, the more you're going to want to add into it in volume. Muffin method starts with me sifting my dry ingredients. Now you don't have to sift your dry ingredients if it's just going to be some all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour is not necessarily going to get too clumped together. Cake flour is way more prone to clump, but you know, even with cake flour, you can just take your whisk and whisk your dry ingredients before you add anything. And what this does is if there's any clumps in there, it's going to knock them out. And then it's also going to allow so that you stir in to your flour, sort of get it all evenly dispersed, your baking soda as well as your salt. So now we're going to add wet to dry. Lots of different people say different stuff about this, whether you're going to go wet to dry, dry to wet. I go wet to dry because I want to make sure that if I put all my dried in there, it sort of creates like a little island of dry pieces, and then you have to break it apart. If I put this in, there's less chance of there being like little clumps at the end. So we are going to add this directly into here. It is all my wet ingredients -1. We're going to add to this 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then we're going to stir it. Now we're not going to over mix it. Okay? We're going to stir it, get it so it starts to look like it's starting to come together, and we're being really delicate with it. When it looks like it's almost together, what I want to do is I want to add my additives. So there's still little bits of flour in there. That's okay. We're going to add a cup of chocolate chips. Now I'm using dark chocolate chips, and I toasted a cup of walnuts, crushed walnuts earlier. I'm going to fold this in. And now it's not 100% together. There's little pieces in here still. That's okay. We're going to put this into a already cooking sprayed loaf pan. As you can see, there's still a little bit of flour in there. That's okay. If you see it and you see some flour, just mix it up a little bit. You don't want to have like big chunks of flour, but small little pieces of flour in here, that's not a problem. It's not going to be an issue when you cook it. So I'm going to sort of put it so it's even in the pan. So now this is probably going to cook for between an hour and 15 minutes in a 350 degree oven. Okay, so I'm going to go put this in now. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, so if it starts getting too brown while it's in the oven, mine did, you're going to want to throw a little bit of foil on top of it. You want to throw the foil on top of it so it doesn't radiate in and get it nice, and because it'll just turn super dark. You want it to be about this dark, right? You want it to look nice and rich, past golden, but you definitely don't want it to look burnt. And so be careful if it starts getting even a little too brown for you. Go grab some foil, put it on top, and let it cook the rest of the way. Keep your eye on it. I put the foil on it around half an hour or so, maybe 35 minutes is when I put the foil on. Now, you might get some false positives in here. There's little chunks of banana that might not be completely solidified, and there's also chocolate in here. So when you insert your toothpick, it may come back perfectly clean in one spot, and then you might stick it in and it looks, I don't know if you can see that, it looks like it's not clean at all here, okay? That I just put it in the chocolate. So sometimes you can fool yourself by thinking, wow, it's coming out clean, but then you put it into something else, or you might put it in and pull it out and it looks like it's completely goopy. Put it in a little next to where you just stuck the toothpick in, just so you can double check to make sure that it's fully cooked. You might just be hitting a goopy spot like chocolate or banana. You can tell when it's done, it starts to pull away from the sides. You see how it's pulling away from the sides here? I don't know if you can see that. It's starting to pull away from the sides of the pan. It's firm when I touch it, then it's finished. It's got to cool before I cut into it. So I'm going to wait about an hour before I cut into it. I'm going to leave it here, let it sit, let it cool. Okay, we've waited around a little bit. Let's get our banana bread out of its little case here. And let's cut into it. What do we say? And that chocolate in there, looking good. Yeah, that looks good. Cut a piece of this off. I'm gonna make sure I get a little piece with nut in it here. Some of this walnut in it. This is the kind of banana bread you wanna have. It's really soft. And I think, like sometimes you can get banana bread and you can overwork the batter. And if you overwork it, it gets real tough. And this, all the way out to the edge, even where you'd think it might be a little tougher, it's really excellent. It's soft, really hearty banana flavor. And I like the dark chocolate in there because there's like a little bit of a bitter edge because it's really sweet, right? So the banana, of course, has a lot of sweetness to it. And that dark chocolate adds a little bitter edge. And then, of course, the roasted nuts, the roasted walnuts that are in there, that adds another layer of flavor, really rich flavor. This is an excellent recipe. Super easy to do. All you need to do is just buy too many bananas when you go to the store. You gotta strategically buy too many. All right, thank you for joining me today. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you try this recipe, let me know what additions you might wanna put in banana bread. Leave it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.